Hi everyone. The topic that I chose for my informative speech is modern slavery. What do you think when someone says slavery? Maybe the only thing that comes to mind is African American enslavement or back in the day enslavement. Many people believe that slavery does not exist today. But truth is that it doesn't maybe exist in the way that it used to, but slavery still exists today. The purpose of my speech today is to inform and bring to light a problem that exists around the world. Modern slavery is not a joke, for it has been responsible for the misery and destruction of many people and families. Slavery is something that needs to be taken care of by all our nations, our governments, and just by us ourselves. This problem is invisible to the average class person, but to the people in third world situations or even first world situations, this becomes a struggle in their daily lives. More than 40 million people around the world fall victims to modern slavery. Whether it's people who work in farming fields, car services, housekeeping services, or even prostitution, sex trafficking is a massive problem in our 21st century world. For this example, forced labor exploitation, 16 million people fall victim to that. Forced marriages, this including child marriages, 15,400,000 people. Forced sexual exploitation, 4,800,000 people fall into that category. State-imposed forced labor is 4,100,000. Forced labor by state is your daily debt when you have to buy a house because you are forced to work in order to pay that house. 29% of modern enslavement is males. 71% of those are female. 25% of those are child. Children should not fall into these categories. Everyone has a right. I believe everyone has a right to freedom. But right now, millions of children and adults are trapped in slavery in every single country in the world except for Iceland, including in the United States. Modern slavery is all around us, but often just out of our sight. People can become entrapped making our clothes, serving our foods, picking our crops, or even working in factories for the clothes that we use. From the outside, it can look like a regular job, but people are being controlled. They can face violence and threats, be forced into incapable debt, or have their passport taken away and force them to work in situations that are just inhuman. Simply because they were trying to escape the situation that they wanted to get out of, they fall into these even worse situations. I haven't seen this problem personally, but I know it exists around us. It could be people who work in housekeeping, or it could be your neighbor. It doesn't matter who it is, modern slavery exists all around us. Children is the worst part, and women, everything in general, this should not happen around the world. People who pick our crops daily are forced to live in conditions that are just outright disgraceful. The kinds of slavery that exist today is human trafficking. The use of violent threats and to transport them in horrible cars, recruiting them in disgusting conditions, to exploit them for the purpose such as forced prostitution, labor, criminality, marriage, or even organ removal. Forced labor is another one. This falls into the category of people who pick our crops, people who make our clothes in factories. Then there's debt bondage or bonded labor, the world's most widespread from the slavery. People trapped in poverty borrow money and are forced to pay off that debt, losing control over their employment conditions and their own debt. This means that if you and I were to buy a house, if we're not able to continue paying that, we are forced to keep working. They take away our house, but we have to continue working to pay off that debt. That is the purpose of debt bondage. Then there's descent-based slavery. Most traditional forms of slavery, where people are treated as an item, sort of like a pet or a car. It's passed down generation through generations. Then there's slavery of children. When a child is exploited for someone else's gain. This can include child trafficking, child soldiers, child marriage, or even child domestic slavery. Then we have forced and early marriage. This is one of the most common slavery there is in third world nations, or even communist nations. When someone is married against their will, it doesn't matter what the conditions are, this is still considered slavery. Now, who suffers most from slavery? Like I stated before, 40 million people around the world, give or take, fall into modern slavery. 22% of this are for sex trafficking. 78% is forced labor. 1 in 4 of these people that are in modern enslavement are children. This business makes a profit of $150 billion each year. 99 billion from sexual exploitation. 34 billion from construction, mining, manufacturing, and utilities. 9 billion from agricultural, forestry, and from others. 8 billion from domestic censuration. This is something that should not exist in our modern times. In China, there are 3,864,000 people in modern enslavement. In India, which has less people than China, has 7,989,000 people in modern enslavement. This is something unacceptable. Pakistan has 3,186,000 people in modern enslavement. North Korea has 2,640,000 people in modern enslavement. Nigeria has 1,386,000 people in modern enslavement. Those are just a few, just to name them. And in the United States, it still exists as well. Though we fight it more than other countries, it does not mean that it doesn't exist. These numbers should not even exist. Just the thought that 70% of those 40 million people are women is very devastating to my heart. Modern slavery is a very harsh business because it's not even considered business. It controls people's freedom and their right to live. The different kinds of slavery and who suffer from slavery and where and when. We can all do something to stop slavery. People think that it's just something from the past, but that's not our case. Modern slavery is a thing of the present. This is something that we all need to take part of. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, Chinese, it does not matter. We can all form a part and take a stand to stop slavery. We all have a voice, and don't forget that anyone can fall into modern slavery. It could be you, it could be me, it could be your neighbor, it could even be your own parents and sisters and brothers. Everyone has a potential to fall into modern slavery, including you. Thank y'all for listening, and I really hope y'all enjoyed my video. And for reference, y'all can go to modernslaveryindex.com. Thank you, everyone.